Cuauhtémoc was the last Tlatoani, the final speaker of a collapsing world. He did not inherit an empire in its glory. He inherited ashes, betrayal, and a city under siege. Yet in the face of extinction, he chose to fight. When the Spanish came with steel, gunpowder, horses, and ambition, Cuauhtémoc stood between them and the soul of Tenochtitlan, and even as his city was surrounded, even as his people starved, even as the gods fell silent, he refused to kneel. He ruled not for power, but to die with honor. He was born around 1495, a son of Aztec nobility, possibly the nephew of Moctezuma II. His name meant descending sun or descending eagle, a symbol of twilight, of the final dive of the eagle before nightfall. Some have called him the sun setting on the Aztec Empire. Others see him as the fire that would refuse to go out. As a youth, he was trained in the Calmecac, the elite school for nobles. There he studied astronomy, religion, poetry, war, and the strict moral code of Mexica leadership. He became a warrior early and earned battlefield recognition, rising to the position of Tlacochcalcatl, commander of the armory, one of the highest military ranks in the empire. He was brave, intelligent, and spiritually devout. He honored Huitzilopochtli, the god of war, but also believed deeply in the cosmic balance that held the empire together. He understood that the Tlatoani was not just a king, but the axis between gods and people. And he knew even before the first Spanish ship landed that axis was breaking. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived on the shores of Veracruz. He came not as a diplomat, but as an invader. Backed by Spanish steel, religious zealotry, and a hunger for gold, he marched inland. The Spanish had only a few hundred men, but they had gunpowder, horses, armor, and perhaps most critically, discontented allies. The Aztec Empire, powerful though it was, ruled through fear and tribute. Dozens of surrounding city-states hated them. Cortés exploited this. He allied with the Tlaxcalans, the Totonacs, and other indigenous enemies of the Mexica. When he arrived at Tenochtitlan, Moctezuma received him cautiously, torn between diplomacy and prophecy. Within months, Cortés took Moctezuma hostage. When the people rebelled, the city erupted in violence. Moctezuma was killed, either by the Spanish or by his own people. The Spanish fled in a night of chaos known as La Noche Triste. Thousands died, Spanish armor sank in the canals. But Cortés did not give up. He returned with thousands of indigenous allies and laid siege to the city. By then, Cuauhtémoc had been elected Tlatoani after the death of his predecessor Cuitláhuac, who had succumbed to smallpox. Cuauhtémoc, barely in his 20s, became emperor in a city torn by disease, war, and spiritual collapse. But he accepted the role not to rule, but to resist. He ordered the canals fortified, the causeways defended, the temples guarded. The Spanish began their siege in May 1521. What followed was 93 days of unimaginable horror. The Spanish cut off the aqueducts, starving the city of fresh water. They burned the surrounding villages and crops. They launched daily assaults from brigantines, ships they had built on Lake Texcoco with the help of their indigenous allies. Every day brought more death. Cuauhtémoc refused to surrender. His warriors fought from rooftops, behind barricades, from narrow alleyways. They used obsidian-tipped spears, slings, and fire. They turned the city into a maze of resistance. The people melted down what gold they had left to make weapons. Priests climbed temple steps and prayed until the last drumbeat fell silent. Starvation consumed the city. With no food, no clean water, and the dead piling in the streets, the defenders still chose resistance. Parents told their children stories of Tlaloc and Quetzalcoatl while burying their neighbors. Even as the temples crumbled and the pyramids burned, the Mexica spirit endured. Cuauhtémoc was not just leading an army. He was becoming a symbol of refusal, of identity, of the final breath of a people who would not disappear quietly. On August 13, 1521, it ended. Cuauhtémoc attempted to flee across Lake Texcoco in a canoe, possibly to continue the resistance from another region. He was captured by Spanish brigantines and brought before Hernán Cortés. Bound and bloodied, Cuauhtémoc stood before the man who had destroyed his city. According to some accounts, he said, "I have done what was my duty in defense of my city and my people. Now take your dagger and finish your task." Cortés spared him, but only for a time. Cuauhtémoc was paraded through the ruins of Tenochtitlan. He was forced to witness the desecration of temples, the burning of libraries, the looting of shrines. The Spanish tore down the Great Pyramid, destroyed idols, and built churches over sacred ground. The city was renamed Mexico City. His people were enslaved and conscripted into building the new colonial capital. Cuauhtémoc was kept as a puppet ruler, paraded for the camera of conquest. But even in chains, he remained dangerous. In 1525, during a grueling expedition to Honduras, Cortés accused Cuauhtémoc of plotting rebellion. Along with other Mexican nobles, he was tortured and then executed, hanged in the jungle, far from his home, his city, his gods. His body was discarded. No proper burial, no last rites, no tomb. But memory is its own altar. Cuauhtémoc's story did not die. Over the centuries, he became something more than an emperor. He became a symbol of the soul that would not bow, of the people who endured after empire, of the fire that kept burning beneath the ashes. In the 19th century, during Mexico's War for Independence, Cuauhtémoc was invoked as a native hero. While Spain claimed conquest, the revolutionaries claimed lineage. Monuments were built in his name. Poets wrote of his final stand. Politicians painted him as a father of the Mexican identity, not Spanish, not European, but indigenous and enduring. Statues of him now stand in Mexico City, in Ixcateopan, in plazas and parks across the nation. His name graces streets, schools, and children. His image appears in murals beside Zapata, Hidalgo, and Benito Juárez. But his power lies not in bronze, or names, or textbooks. His power lies in what he represents. Cuauhtémoc is the embodiment of resistance. He did not win. He did not survive. But he refused. And in that refusal, he gave birth to a new kind of memory, not one of conquest, but of defiance. He stood as the world he knew collapsed, and in that collapse, he chose to hold the line. In the face of overwhelming odds, of hunger, of spiritual annihilation, he led with clarity. He fought not for victory, but for the dignity of his people's end. His story reminds us that some victories are spiritual, that there is strength in standing your ground even when you know you will lose. That history does not only belong to the conqueror, it also belongs to the one who says, "I will not bow." Cuauhtémoc's greatness lies not in conquest, but in refusal to be erased. He was the last speaker of a people who refused silence. He was the final guardian of a city that still breathes beneath stone and concrete. Even today, beneath the cathedrals and asphalt of Mexico City, the heartbeat of Tenochtitlán can still be felt. The canals may be buried, the pyramids torn down, but the memory of Cuauhtémoc pulses through the land. It is whispered in Nahuatl lullabies. It is painted on walls in the barrios. It lives in the names, in the dance, in the resistance of indigenous communities that still fight for dignity. Cuauhtémoc is not only the past, he is the unfinished sentence of a civilization interrupted. He is the last breath of an empire that lives on in shadow and soil. The story of the Aztec Empire does not end with collapse. It ends with Cuauhtémoc choosing not to submit. And from that choice, a new kind of empire was born, not of land, but of spirit. An empire of memory, carried not by kings, but by people. By the children of those who survived. By those who carry obsidian dreams in modern cities. By every voice that says, "We were here, we are still here." Cuauhtémoc is not just Mexico's last emperor. He is a mirror, a challenge, a legacy. He reminds us that sometimes the greatest power is not in how long you reign, but how bravely you fall.